He was stuffed in a suitcase and left under a bridge in Florida. It was an awful, awful story. You see that little face there. Well, his stepmother, Letitia Stock, was convicted in May of the little boy. The judge said it was the most horrific case that he had ever seen in his entire career.
Hello everyone, and today we are talking about a YouTuber who I do not prefer by the name of Zav Girl. This story is pretty old. I believe a couple months ago this was talked about a lot, but I want to put in my 2 cents because I've been wanting to talk about this. Alright, so who is Zav Girl? Zav Girl is a true crime YouTuber who took it more than a few steps too far. She ended up putting photos on her Patreon, so behind a paywall, and the photos were of this little boy. His name was Gannon. His life was taken by his stepmother in a very gruesome way. I first heard about this through Brian Inton, and he's mad for good reason.
This is one of those things that I can just still sort of feel myself fuming over. Normally I'm even-tempered. You kind of have to be when you cover crimes the way I do. But I've always been very, very sensitive when it comes to grieving families. And when people hurt victims' families, especially people with big platforms, to make money, it just really, really gets me. You may remember the story of Gannon Stoke, the Colorado 11-year-old by his stepmother. He was hit in the head, he was shot, and then he was stuffed in a suitcase and left under a bridge in Florida. It was an awful, awful story. You see that little face there.
Just right there, you understand the gravity of how gruesome this crime was on a small child. My question, first of all, was who would want to see that in the first place? Who really wants to, unless they're a very sadistic person, want to do that? Well, she has an interesting way of justifying her actions.
The trial got a lot of coverage, especially from true crime YouTubers, and I gotta say, I know a lot of the podcasters out there. Most of them are really, really responsible. They're good people. I'm friends with a bunch. I was just texting with a buddy a little while ago, a YouTuber. They're ethical, they're victim-focused, but you know how it is. There are always bad apples in the group.
This also makes me upset. Most of you probably don't remember, but I covered the Gabby Petito case as it was unfolding. It was one of my first few videos. It was a series, and I tried my best not to exploit anybody or do anything like that, but it's very tough to cover true crime. There are some people who don't have any empathy for other people. Those are the people who cover true crime that really shouldn't, because they cannot think about the families. And this is a case of that. Zav Girl, completely unempathetic to the family, acting like Gannon is more of a science project than anything else.
Zav Girl thought it would be a good idea to put in a Freedom of Information request for little 11-year-old Gannon's photos. And they actually released the photos to her. She had to pay. They released the photos and she got them on her Patreon account, which is an account attached to her YouTube page, and she charged her followers money to see the photos. For $3, you could see little Gannon's body. She was making money off of that little boy's photos. It's hard enough for the jury to have to look at them, but for this YouTuber to go to all that trouble to request them, to pay the money, to get them from the government, and not only post them, but then to charge people to see them. I mean, I just find it sick.
These are real families that are affected by a tragic passing of a child. His life was brutally taken by someone he thought he could trust. A stepmother? Obviously, you're supposed to be able to trust them.
It's back up now. I screen grabbed it. This is part of it. She wrote, "The reality of the situation is that different people feel differently about this. Some people are genuinely think making a video including the autopsy photos is bad, and I respect their opinion and feelings. Other people like myself think of autopsy photos and the coroner discussing, explaining, interesting, and informative, are all able to view it in a more scientific, detached way."
You should not be viewing somebody's murder in a scientific, detached way. Because if you want to get into the psychology of someone who murdered someone, you don't need to look at the autopsy photos. You just need to know basically what was used. And in his case, everything you can think of was done to this poor little boy. So obviously, this woman is the most evil woman you can think of. And honestly, that's enough.
Well, Zav Girl, there is nothing detached about posting the autopsy photos of an 11-year-old little boy, and then, on top of it, which I really think pushes it over the line, charging money for people to see them. It is sick, it's deranged, and you should just own up to it.
You have to be some kind of sadistic to want to see those. I'm sorry, but you have to be. The coroner does provide the diagrams, like he said. That's perfectly good enough for your scientific research.
It is re-traumatizing. It's hard to, we just finished the trial just over 2 months ago, Brian, and now we're having to kind of relive some of this stuff and not being able to put it behind us.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, what really pushed it over the edge was the charging the money. I mean, obviously posting it alone would be disgusting, but then charging money to see those photos, it's really, really just awful.
The word I use to describe it is evil, Brian. In my opinion, it's just evil. Like the world got enough information from the trial to have every discussion.
Absolutely. His father is right.
And they want to have, why do we need to go have freedom of information request and pay for this kind of information and then dishonor my son by putting these photos out there like that? I mean, the world got to see it. I don't know how well you followed it, but the only day I chose not to come to the trial was the day that they showed the autopsy photos. Now I feel like I can't even go on YouTube without the possibility of accidentally coming across these photos.
And it is his right to not want to see his son like that. It is his right to not want to accidentally stumble across that. And now that's a fear he has to live with every single day he goes on the internet. Now, her response, Zav Girl's response, was taken down to, from what I understand, I've tried to find her apology. And the only place I found it was to Mimi's video.
The reality of this situation is that different people feel differently about this. Again, same statement. I am not adamantly against taking down the video if people are truly unhappy with it, and I will absolutely consider doing that. But right now, it seems there are a lot of other people who are acting in bad faith, creating lies for fun and excitement in order to pit others against me. If you've heard the latest rumor that I've been distributing photos of Gannon's, I assure you I have not, and his isn't visible in any autopsy photos in the autopsy coroner video.
For one, I would hope not. For two, that's not the main concern.
So it's a bit difficult to sort through what's what, when there are other creators who have the same autopsy photos up here right now on YouTube for the public viewing on their channel, where anyone can stumble across them, and they're not being attacked as I am right now. It becomes obvious that some of this hate I'm receiving is not genuine and is being done for other reasons. I want to stop right there for a second. Like I said, the only two people I've seen so far distributing this content are Zav Girl and Natasha. Anybody else who does this same thing, I assume would receive the same amount of backlash. I think this person is trying really hard to make it seem like, oh, people just don't like me. Really, what people are very upset over is the fact that you did this. This is a very disgusting thing, and it doesn't matter if 1, 2, 3, or 20 people did the same exact thing, it doesn't make it any less severe.
Like, multiple wrongs don't make a right.
Gets clicks. I understand some of you have issues with me charging money on my Patreon for the video. If I was charging money for the autopsy files alone or something like that, I think I'd see your point. But in this case, I spent a lot of time and worked hard putting together a video lining up the coroner's audio and description along with the appropriate part of the photos she is describing and editing it together to try and make it as informative as possible for the viewer.
That's called editing. Yes, editing is a lot of work. I edit my own videos, but that doesn't change anything. Being transformative in this moment does not mean anything.
is what I am charging for, which I would hope any of you can agree is understandable. You still put those pictures in a video and put that video behind a paywall. That's disgusting. If your video was too much for YouTube, but you still wanted to cover the situation, you very easily could have just not put those pictures in the video. Her Patreon has since been deleted. I am not sure if she was the one who deleted it or if Patreon removed it themselves. There's been some debate around that, but yeah, it's gone. And this is what she had to say in her apology.
I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt, but especially Cannon's family. I've been doing some major soul searching and reflecting.
This sounds really robotic and PR.
I requested all the video, audio, and written records. I made no request photos. I wanted all trial records, but my main interests were interviews with Letitia. The autopsy photos just happened to be in the files.
Oh, well, you know, they just so happened to be in the files, and instead of taking them out, I decided to keep them in.
Yep, and she just so happened to upload them on her Patreon, thoroughly edited in a video that was so painstakingly long to make, apparently.
Knew that those photos were in there, and you still decided to post it on a page that people had to pay to get access to.
I believe many of my images were already shown during the televised trial, and I saw the photos on other public YouTube channels that live streamed the trial and shared the evidence. I didn't think any of the images were new. These photos were already public, although the video I put together with the coroner's voice was my own creation. I chose to put the video on Patreon because of the sensitive nature of the evidence. Putting the evidence behind a paywall meant added security. I naively thought they wouldn't be made public.
Other people have already pointed this out, but just because you put it behind a paywall doesn't mean it's private.
The video I created with a voice from the coroner wasn't meant to be shared outside of Patreon. And I chose not to put the photos on YouTube, a public forum.
Patreon is also a public forum. Just because people have to pay to act, I'm repeating myself here.
Where the views would have allowed me to make more money.
No. I believe you'd be making more money probably off of Patreon if it's $3 to be able to watch this video versus you get 8 cents a view on YouTube on average. If it's monetized. There's just no excuse. It was for money.
And the photos would be seen by more people.
You shouldn't have posted these photos anywhere, by the way.
I'm not this evil, heartless person like many are saying, but I'm also doing a lot of self-reflecting, and I'm looking into sensitivity training. And it will be a long time before I ever trust myself or my decisions again. To Gannon's family, I have no words that can make this better. No one should have to ever go through what you guys have been through. I am so very sorry for any pain that I have caused you.
The only thing I can say is, at the very least, this person apologized, unlike the other YouTuber who had put these photos behind a paywall, Natasha. Now, Natasha doubled down.
Because if you're gonna tote this cross about one or the other, then you're gonna have to hold everybody accountable for it. Not just one or two people that done it, that did it. Everybody.
Yeah, there's plenty of people to hold accountable, Natasha being one of them. Also, a trash human being.
The post she made on her community tab. Since I made the decision to only show these photos on Patreon, I have been inundated with criticism and disdain. It amazes me how people who are allegedly interested in true crime and other true crime creators are making out like Zav Girl and I have committed a criminal act or a moral sin. Anyone who follows true
I would say that is kind of a moral sin. When it comes to true crime, you need to respect the family's wishes. What is missing in their brain that makes them lack just the common sense and common decency to respect people? This is a very moral issue. And the issue I have with most true crime is people disrespecting the families. That is the worst thing you can do. They've already gone through so much having their loved one taken from them in such a way. Why would you add to their pain? I feel strongly about the importance of talking about true crime. Being victim focused and caring about what the families think, because they are the ones that are experiencing the most pain with this. And to the YouTubers like Kendall Ray who work with the victims' families to make videos, I greatly, greatly respect them. People like Zav Girl, Natasha, they don't deserve a platform. The point of true crime should be sharing their stories and to help gain justice for the victims. But that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. And as always, I would like to thank my channel members, especially my tier 3 members, for supporting the channel. And stay safe out there. Bye.